Sometimes it makes the most sense to host your stuff on your own site, but there are times when you may want to host externally on some other sites. So let's talk about hosting and different hosting locations. Some of the different hosting locations would be like the public cloud, the private cloud, a community cloud, and then of course there is always the option of hybrid. So let's talk about each one of those and the pros and cons of each of those. So let's talk about public cloud. One place you can host some of your equipment is within the public cloud. The cloud is the networks, the internet, the everything that's out there. We represent it as a cloud because it's so big and so many different networks and designed in so many different ways and using so many different protocols. It's just this massive thing. We represent it as the cloud. A public cloud is what all people have access to out there. So people have access to everything out in this public cloud. There's a lot of shared resources. Companies will put stuff out there and sell it as part of their shared cloud offering. And so we've got this public cloud, everything that's out there. Now, the advantage of this is you've got big companies that can manage this stuff in bulk. And so the cost of public cloud can be really inexpensive. So you can get servers out there that are really cheap and inexpensive. You can spin them up just in just a little bit. You can spin something up and then spin it back down and only be charged for an hour or so. And so it's really inexpensive to have this. Of course, you do have to worry about how are they managing their resources? Are they secure? You're sharing the resource with other people. Are those people going to overrun the system and cause problems? So there can be some reliability and resource issues when you use public cloud, but it can be incredibly inexpensive as well. So it's a great source for a lot of your computing and a lot of your networking, and we'll take a closer look at some of the other examples as well and compare them to this public cloud. But a public cloud can be a tremendous resource for you. Then we have the private cloud. The private cloud is the same type of concept where you have all of this in networking equipment, you have all these servers, you have all of this gear, but you privately own it. It's private. It's a private cloud. No one else has access to it. Perhaps it's on your premise, on site, or perhaps it's at another location. We'll talk about co-location and on-premise. We'll talk about all that. But essentially, this is equipment that you own. No one else has access to it. So that's the private cloud. Obviously, it's going to be quite a bit more expensive. You have quite a bit more control over it. So that could equate to better security and more reliability. But that's the private cloud, is you privately own the equipment that's hosting your application or hosting the services that you have running on your systems. There is something called a community cloud, and the community cloud is same thing. You've got this set of equipment, you've got this set of networking gear, of these servers, of the storage. You have this set of this equipment, but it's shared amongst the community, or maybe several different businesses own this equipment. And so several different businesses own this equipment. It's not specifically yours, it's not private, but you work with other people to manage this and to purchase this equipment. Then you have hybrid. With all of these different technologies, you have hybrid, but the way the hybrid works with this is you possibly have some sort of private equipment that you own, but then you also have some cloud resources, and it shares the responsibility between this. So perhaps you have some user-facing services that are out there in the cloud, or perhaps you just back up to the cloud and use it as some sort of backup, or have some sort of hot site or warm site, or you have duplicate equipment in the cloud. So if something goes awry with your internal equipment, you can turn it up. So somehow you're straddling between the private cloud and the public cloud, and you have resources that are shared amongst those two systems. So what do those all look like? What are the advantages of them? Well, here's some comparisons. Here's the public, private, community, and hybrid. Your easiest is probably the public cloud. They have interfaces. You just go in there, you set up the resources, you pay for what you're using. And so because of that, it also can be the least expensive versus the private cloud. You are administering all of it yourself. And so it can be very costly because you got to buy that. The advantage of the community is you share some of that management of it and some of the cost of it. So therefore you're splitting that amongst several different businesses. So that's an advantage of that. And then from a security standpoint, we have on the public cloud, low reliability could be low. The data control, the control that you have over it is definitely low. But you know, from a security standpoint, and from a reliability standpoint, I would argue that private and public cloud can vary. What I mean by this is that in the public cloud, you have people who are dedicated towards security. You have people that are dedicated towards reliability. You have in the private cloud, hopefully you have that as well. But either public cloud and private cloud can both be mismanaged, can both be under-resourced. And so you could have issues in public cloud that you don't have in the private cloud because you have control over it and you're able to manage all of that. But if you're lacking resources to control and manage that, and the public cloud, there's some public cloud offerings that are tremendously reliable and have a great amount of security involved in it. So I would say that it just really depends on what your team capabilities are and how they can manage the public cloud and how they can manage the private cloud. Just a reminder, hit that like button. Scalability, I would say public cloud wins it. Public cloud is very scalable. You can have that in private cloud, but it just takes a lot of engineering to get the same amount of scalability that the public cloud has to offer. And of course, that's going to cost even more. And then the community and hybrids could just vary depending on how you have that set up and who you're partnering with. And so those can vary as well. But this is kind of the layout of the comparison of those different models. So we talked about the pros and cons of hosting things in a public cloud, in a private cloud, in a community cloud, and a hybrid cloud. And which one you choose is going to be based off of the needs so that you meet the needs of the business.